Meeting held September 13th. I am the chair, Kevin O'Toole. I've got joining me Councillor Bressie, Councillor Thiessen, and Mayor Clayton. We have no delegations, but we do have 2 reports. And we'll start off with 3.1, the Director Service Area Report. Mr. Manuel.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Community Social Development is reporting that a new program called Explore GP, which was recently launched to support newcomers to Grande Prairie, has had 43 applications and is assisting 83 individuals. So that's a really good uptick on a brand new program. Welcoming Week is set to kick off on Saturday, September 10th at the GP Museum from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Over at Enforcement Services, the Public Security Unit is now operational with 4 full-time positions and is looking to have an additional 4 come on within the next 2 weeks. When the additional 4 are hired, that will give us the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week coverage we desire. The unit's been tasked with primarily patrolling the downtown core and has so far received positive feedback from the community. And we look forward to expanding those hours. Additionally, a second operation related to vehicle for hire was ran to address concerns brought forward by the designated driving services operating within the city. As a result of that operation, 2 illegal operators were caught and charged, issued violation tickets for their illegal operation without permitting and licensing. In regard to unsightly properties, Enforcement Services continues to receive and investigate a number of unsightly properties in the city, primarily pertaining to tall weeds and overgrown grass. A number of owners have become compliant and are responding to remedial notices. However, others have not, and enforcement is looking to ramp up with the issuance of either violation tickets or orders to enter the property and correct the deficiencies. In GPREP, this weekend, GPREP was contacted by Emergency Management British Columbia with a request for assistance to stand up a reception center and accommodation for residents of Hudson Hope impacted by the Battleship Mountain Fire. Ultimately, the residents were able to be accommodated within BC, so we've since stood down, but the group that responded did a good job on short order late at night to put together a plan had it became necessary. The fire department indicates that annual hose testing for 2022 is now complete. Apparently all the leaks are taken care of if there was any, and they deemed the equipment to be in acceptable condition for emergency operations. The fire department will additionally be hosting a pump course starting September 19th, which teaches firefighters how to operate the pump and ancillary equipment of the units. And passing the course is a requirement before firefighters can operate such units at incidents. Over at the RCMP, the Community Engagement Unit completed safety initiatives within school zones during the first week of school. I actually saw them on my way to work. Fortunately, didn't have to interact with any in an enforcement capacity. The unit also completed UTV and foot patrols throughout Muskosipi Park, the Eastlink Center, and Community Knowledge Campus. Further, the unit will be attending a community barbecue at Sunrise House and was present at the Experience GP event. Additionally, for a number of months, the Grande Prairie RCMP General Duty members have been encouraged to be proactive in their day-to-day work, including enhanced traffic enforcement activities. It's a good way for them to certainly be out and about in the community and interacting, looking for various criminal and provincial statute offenses. As such, in action, a traffic stop conducted by a member September 5th located an individual known to be wanted on outstanding criminal warrants who was driving a motorcycle. The motorcycle was stopped, and a search incident to the arrest led to the location of drugs and other items. The following day, members executed a search warrant on the suspect's motorcycle, which then led to search warrants being executed on their residence and storage unit. As a result, more drugs as well as firearms were located and seized with charges pending against the suspect. So it goes to show how one traffic stop can snowball into a much larger criminal investigation, which is what occurred here, and which is exactly what we like to see. In the mobile outreach program, their note for this update is actually their support of the recently introduced public security unit. They indicate that it's been a great addition to working with their team. They've responded to calls for service when the outreach team was unavailable, and I've been doing a great job at supporting clients. So I appreciate the outreach program recognizing the partnership that exists there. And that's it for updates.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee? We're good? Okay. We will move on to 3.2, traffic safety and speed concerns. Mr. Mike Lefebvre and Ross Greer, please come and present at the table. Welcome.
Good morning. For the enforcement services, we're directed from committee to direct administration to bring back a report outlining the current enforcement and safety speed risks along the old bypass, along with any corridors that may be of concern. As this was with most collisions in Grande Prairie tend to occur on high volume roads and intersections, the severity of collisions in these corridors is also most significant on average and is primarily related to increased vehicle speeds and sometimes factors such as involvement with larger commercial vehicles, which would include the bypass, and also we're looking at 108th Street that goes south of town. Versus the citizens' concerns about areas of traffic reported to the city often differ from those we get through analytics from, like I said, those high traffic areas. These are more associated to neighborhood collector roads where both speeds and volumes are lower, but where there's pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles that may conflict. Just if you look at some of the, you've obviously read the report, some of the data that's we'd like to focus on is that from 2014 and 2021, there's been a steady decrease in both collision frequency within the municipality. More specifically, in 2014, there was over 4,000 collision injuries as compared to over 1,000 in 2021. So we noticed that there is a 71.6% reduction from the peak time in 2014. Furthermore, we've gone through some of the data and the statistics in regards to the traffic safety strategies for enforcement services. We look at intelligence-led enforcement, integrated enforcement, education, and engineering planning. This year, as a result of the last 2 years of COVID and some restrictions with the community, one of our focus will be again on education. For example, this weekend the Legion is having a First Responder Appreciation Day, and enforcement, fire, ambulance, and the RCMP will be participating in a mock scenario of a collision. So these are the type of educations planning that enforcement is planning on doing in this upcoming year. In terms of the other points of importance here is the economic impact. If you look at the report, there was a report prepared by the Capital Region Intersection Safety Partnership in 2010, which basically identified the average cost associated to fatality, injury, property collisions in the Edmonton area. In this report, you have the 2010 results. I do also have the numbers for, I found there was a 2018 report. And as for example, the fatal collisions have gone up from 181,000 to 225,000. Injury collisions, 39,000 to 48,000. And the property collisions approximately from 10,000 to 14,000. Just to demonstrate that over the years, the cost to the municipality has continued to increase. That's pretty much the end of the report, and we're open for any questions.
I've got one question in queue. Councillor Blackmore, your hand is up.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole. One of the data pieces that I don't see in this report that I think is fairly important is knowing how many traffic movements go through an intersection, whether that be done on an average daily basis or average annual basis. I think that's an important piece of information. Certainly a busy intersection is going to see more accidents than one that has significantly less people. And I think that's important when you start judging the safety of the intersection. So I would look forward to seeing that information sometime in the future. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay. Welcome. I got a response here for you. Go ahead, Mr. Manuel.
Certainly. So I can certainly comment that those movements are taken into consideration as part of the engineering component of this report. Certainly, I believe traffic engineering can come back and provide the specific data. I do know that one of the challenges that exists is the frequency of the counts occurs at different times. So certainly where infrastructure is in place on those primary routes, the old bypass, for instance, it's easy to get pretty consistent numbers over large periods of time. However, some of these intersections are counted, once every 10 years, for instance. So there is some gaps that exist there, but certainly that report can come back.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add one thing, Councillor O'Toole.
Sure.
One of the reasons I think it's important to know traffic counts is because traffic safety is often solved by engineering rather than by enforcement. And so I think that that's always an important aspect to keep in mind when we're looking at intersections that we might consider more dangerous than others. Is there an engineered solution that can come forth to save lives? So I think that's why that information is really important for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have anything more to talk about that subject? We're good? Okay. Mr. Berg.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the comments that I had is, as I look at this list and I was going through my phone, checking out each one of these streets, I notice, and I'm not a fan of photo radar, but again, I will compliment and probably credit some of that for that dramatic drop of, again, 71.6%. That's amazing from the peak in 2014. But the 4 places that I consistently see photo radar are not on this list. So I guess a question would be, have you considered redeploying to some of these locations for speed control? Again, and maybe because those 4 places I consistently see the photo radar aren't on this list is because I've got photo radar. So an argument can be made for and against. But again, I just see where I consistently see them set up may not be the best use of our resources.
Mr. Manuel?
So that's so it's a good point. So I guess I'll just provide a little bit of history. So back in 2014, where the fixed equipment was deployed, because there were 7 intersections that had fixed systems deployed in them, they were deployed to the top 7, and subsequently those have fallen out of the list. Now there is a couple considerations here. So the second one, which was a 100th Street and 116th Ave, had equipment, but the equipment had to be moved because of construction activities related to engineered improvements. The 108th Street and 68th Ave, that one does have equipment there presently going southbound. And 108th Street and 84th Ave is certainly a place we would have loved to have put it. Unfortunately, the number of fiber optic lines and utilities and stuff running through that corridor doesn't allow for the current deployment of the technology available to us at that site. So we have had to utilize mobile technologies. So where you don't see fixed equipment, they may very well be authorized zones for mobile presence.
Okay, yeah, and the one that specifically comes to mind is that 68th and 100th, where I was driving in the area, red light goes green, BMW and an old souped-up truck just drag raced through the green light and all the way down almost to Resources Road. So, and that was at 2 in the afternoon. So, again, I think if photo radar was set up somewhere in there, that might be a deterrent as opposed to some of the other places that I consistently see it.
Okay. Councillor Thiessen and Councillor Bosch after.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. Ooh, I really wanted to get in here. Just a comment on that. Sometimes even if we just put up a sign that says photo enforced, and we move the camera in and out, usually that keeps people's speed in check. At least it keeps me in check. So just a thought for deployment. One of the things that I really appreciate this report, so thank you very much for this, gentleman. But one of the things that I saw is, and it's a correlation to figure 2, speed increases, stopping distance, and they have a pedestrian there that the cause of fatality based off the speed of the vehicle increases. Now, we know this as council, we receive a report like this every year. One thing that I did was I had to do a little bit of math because I saw all the collisions that had happened and occurred and the number of drivers. But so it should very easily be like a 1 and 2, you know, usually there's 2 cars in a collision. But what I'm raising here is pedestrian collisions. So when I did the math and I divided that number by 2, just imagining that every collision is 1 car hitting another car, I came out with a remainder number of 14 different people that I only would imagine would be pedestrians. So I think if we're talking about traffic safety, it's one thing to get into a collision when you're in a car. It's another thing when you don't have a big metal shield in front of you protecting you like a force field, and you're a pedestrian crossing the street. So am I wrong in doing that math and seeing that 14 pedestrians were involved in motor vehicle collisions?
Through the chair, that's the data that we could get from the Collision Reporting Center or the RCMP, but I'd be way off to say if you divide it by 2. So I can come back with that.
Okay.
Through the chair, Councillor, that seems high to me, but we would have to give the exact data to be sure.
Mm. Yeah, because I think when we're talking traffic safety, I know pedestrians aren't driving, but bicyclists are driving, so they could have been involved in that as well. So I think if we do reports like this, which we do almost annually, it seems, I'd like to see if there's been any pedestrian collisions, because for me, there's really no protection for somebody who might get hit by a drag race around 68th just crossing the street. So appreciate that, guys, and thanks so much for the work that you put in.
Thank you.
I just got a comment to your comment. I live on 101st and 112th Avenue, and I can tell you there's a lot of people that cross the street without even looking up, and they've got their cell phone. Yeah. So I've got into the habit of just driving extremely slow down either one of those streets because they're just not paying attention. They're coming out of Giant Tiger and they're just going by. So, yeah. What it does is make us guys be a little bit more defensive. So, Councillor Bosch and then Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole. Actually, my question was about pedestrian injury or fatality and involvement in this traffic safety report. So it's already been dealt with. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bressie.
Great, thank you. A question I've got is, I think why the motion got made originally was a mention that there might be issues with photo enforcement in some more dangerous intersections, and also enforcement over the old bypass just with changing provincial rules. And I'm wondering if you had a chance to dig into that and if there's anything we should be aware of with new provincial rules that might cause a concern on your end.
Through the chair, we did do a review with the RCMP and with 8 this year, and I believe the number is around, they lost approximately 20 locations as a result of the restrictions implied by the province. And so we've gone down from the previous report, which I believe was 3 years ago. They had lost a certain amount, and now because of the restrictions, and I believe December 31st, there'll be more restrictions coming from the province for photo enforcement.
And the places we lost, is there correlation between ones we lost and high incident intersections?
I'd have to go back and look at the 20 of those. I know that some of the restrictions were if there wasn't in this last few years a certain amount of accidents per year, then they had to be removed. So it might have been where they were high frequency areas in the past, but because they've gone down, potentially as a result of the photo enforcement, now they have to be removed. So some of them, that might be that correlation there.
Great, thank you. Chair O'Toole, when it comes to time for making motions, I'd love to make a motion with some more information that I'm hoping the committee will ask for.
Okay. Thank you. We have from O'Connor, Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. I'm not sure who this question should be directed to, but I'm assuming, and if you could clarify for me, when you show 116th and 97th and 97th and 116, I'm assuming that's two different directions. And so are we able to determine, is this two different enforcement things that we need to set up in this area? And are any of these, are you able to determine whether or not it's distracted driving, or you're on your cell phone doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing when you're driving through an important intersection?
Through the chair, you're absolutely right. It is just a reporting structure. So through the collision reporting center, we get that data, and it's which direction the vehicles were traveling. In terms of knowing if it was distracted driving or red light or something like that, we would have to go specifically in each and every one of those and pull those investigations to see what the actual cause was.
If I can add to that, through the chair, one of the difficulties with information like that, data like that, is if a person is perhaps on their phone distracted driving and they get in a collision, they may not always be truthful with their report. So we all we have is the data that we get when the collision is reported. But I would suspect that it might be a little higher than what is reported.
Okay.
So in that case, do you have the authority, if there is a collision causing injury, to ask for the cell phone of the driver? And I know there's VoIP and you can't do it, but if they were on their phone doing something at the incident, the time of the accident, that would be probably very truth-telling.
If it's a collision like that, it'd probably rest with the RCMP. And I'm just a little hesitant to speak on their behalf. I know that they do have, collision unit set up within the RCMP, and they do investigate serious collisions, but I would just hate to speak on their behalf.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think there's anybody else that had questions. Mr. Bressi, if you want to go ahead and deal with business.
Great, thank you. I do have a pretty specific motion I want to make, but I have emailed that to our recording secretary so it can get captured. And that motion is just looking at figure 1, so the chart we have in our report. I'd love more information around that figure. So my motion is direct administration to bring back further information, including adding traffic counts to figure 1, a map showing each intersection listed in figure 1, and whether any intersections in figure 1 can no longer be photo enforced due to recent provincial changes. Just speak to this. Councillor Blackmore talked about how traffic counts would be useful to her, and I agree with that. And I think there's specific intersections, so we don't need one for every intersection in the city. Talked about a map. I know for me, when I got this report, I had to sit down with my double monitors and do a lot of work looking at, all right, where does this work? Just 'cause that's how my brain works. So both for me to digest this, but also share with residents if they ask. I think just having a map where each of those collisions is would be really useful. Personally, I really love in our traffic master plan, we've got a heat map that showed a different color for higher collision intersections, and that heat map idea might be an idea for administration, but not make that specifically. Even if it was just the same dotted every intersection, so I could quickly find them, even that would be enough for me. But definitely would love to see this visually. And then also, I would just love to know more about, are any of these intersections in particular, do we have photo enforcement concerns? And again, just speak why I'm concerned about photo enforcement is I know from talking to enforcement services and RCMP, a lot of these intersections, if we can't photo enforce them, it's also not safe for an officer to pull somebody over and do traditional enforcement there. So for me, it's not so much saying, hey, we need photo enforcement at all these high traffic intersections. It's saying we need enforcement of some sort, and sometimes it's literally impossible to pull somebody safely over, and I want to know if we're having any of that problem at these intersections.
Fair enough. I call for the vote. Mayor Clayton, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just reading the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Clayton votes in favor.
All right. And that passes unanimously. And I just got one question before you fellows leave. We had a lot of construction going on this year, and I was just wondering if construction may have played a part in some of the incidents or accidents that were just from the top of your head. I don't need to report on it, but
Through the chair, I probably not, Councillor O'Toole. The reason being, in most of these construction areas, the speed is greatly reduced. And when the speed is greatly reduced, the chances of severe collision is, there's always a chance of a collision, of course, but the chances of severe collision is quite reduced. I'm not, I look at the morning reports every day. I'm not really aware of any collisions in the construction areas.
okay. Well, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the outstanding items list. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it. Good information. Mr. Manuel, how are you making out there?
Okay, so I actually have a verbal update on item 1199, which is the Canadian Mental Health Association's property transfer request. So we had initially prepared a report to come here, but it ultimately just said at this time, we believe it's prudent for administration to keep working with CMHA to refine their request around their specific project that they're hoping to allocate these funds towards. So we intend to bring that back at a later date. At this point, I'm going to suggest that for the next meeting, I bring forward a revised report date. In regard to item number 1201, I think we likely remove that one today and replace it with the new motion that Councillor Bressy brought forward today. Everything else will remain on track.
Thank you very much. Looking for someone to deal with the business on this? Go ahead, Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chairman O'Toole. I would move that committee receive the outstanding items list as amended for information.
Thank you. Call for the vote.
Mayor Clayton votes in favor.
And that's carried unanimously. And before we sign out and adjourn this meeting, I want to thank all the staff that was involved in making these reports available and support to this committee. Thank you very much.